Hi, everyone. As John said, I'm Melissa Teitler. I'm here from Cigna, and I'm just thrilled to be here with you today to talk about Cigna's evolution to content personalization. I'm going to focus today on our journey in standing up our dam. We still have plenty left to achieve ahead of us, but we've really come a long way. So we'll focus our time today on senior leader support, approach to launch. Again, this is where we'll spend most of our time together today. Sales support and partnership. And then lastly, where we're headed. And I'm leaving plenty of time for Q&A at the end of the session. So let's jump right in with getting that senior leader support. So I'm going to assume everyone here knows what a dam is, but as basic as the idea is to have a centralized repository, spelling it out that the purpose was to have that single source of truth was really helpful in driving that senior leader support to start the RFP process. So if you're anything like Cigna, you've got people saving content in lots of different repositories or even on their laptops. So for us, when marketers went looking for something, assuming they could find the material, it was not always clear if it was the final legally approved asset. So the amount of time our strategic marketers were spending looking for content or recreating content was a really well-known pain point amongst the leadership team and really hampered our efforts to personalize content. And of course, it then slowed down getting content out to the marketplace. So it can be very difficult to quantify those efficiencies saved by enabling the easier search for marketers and our business partners. That obvious win was really enough for the marketing leaders to support funding this initiative. So let's get into the approach we took to selecting and standing up a tool. So while the concept of a dam is simple and getting senior leader support went relatively smoothly, launching a dam is just a really large undertaking. So we chose to take a very measured, phased approach. So starting with the RFP process, because we are a global organization, the need for a global platform actually limited the number of vendors that we explored. But we were able to partner with our sourcing team here. And this was really helpful because sourcing helped us make sure that we were comparing apples to apples across the 7 vendors that we started with. They also really helped us focus in on what were the most important capabilities for our use cases. And quite frankly, the sourcing team really brought a lot of rigor to the vendor evaluation process that was really beneficial for us. So we brought it down to our top 3 vendors after the demo stage. And we found that while some of the very large dam vendors may have similar capabilities or functionality, we really saw very significant differences in their approach to their roadmap and their continued investment strategy. So the last thing that helped us select a vendor was customer references. So feedback on the implementation approach, on that ongoing support, those are really valuable things to hear directly from their existing customers. And we saw really significant differences between the vendors on those items. We were looking for a partner that would help us implement quickly. We wanted a really quick speed to implementation. And we knew that we'd need that ongoing support as our internal resources were just not going to be enough to manage the tool autonomously going forward. In fact, we actually continue to lean heavily on our vendor today. And having that strong partnership has just been really critical to the success of our tool. So once we selected our vendor, we focused in on setting our taxonomy or our tagging strategy. This second phase on this page is so important for the searchability of the assets. So we engaged are key marketing subject matter experts, or SMEs, and are actually fortunate enough to have a skilled librarian at Cigna who joined the team as well. So this group helped us to find that taxonomy strategy, both what we call those different fields and how we group them together. Now, the main focus within this group was really to identify what were those key words that the users would want to search and filter by, given just the massive amounts of marketing and sales content that we've got at Cigna. Now, we needed to finalize the taxonomy before we could start the content audit, that review and tagging of existing assets for upload into the tool. For the content audit, I actually hired an entry-level contractor just to drive that very manual tagging process. So while she did a lot of that tagging heavy lifting, the asset owners themselves actually had to review and sign off on that tagging before the assets were uploaded. This is really key to have those asset owners sign off, as it was really imperative to me that these older assets and their tagging were not going to be viewed by as owned by my marketing operations team. So we use this content audit process as a way to educate our asset owners on the critical role that they have in making sure that this library is searchable and usable going forward. This fourth phase is around the user acceptance testing. So once we had the tool configured, again, in partnership with our vendor, we brought back in our marketing SMEs to perform the user acceptance testing. Our biggest challenge here was really the balance between the number of required fields to enable a robust search versus that user experience of having a relatively quick and simple asset upload process to drive marketer adoption of the tool. So we found that while our SMEs loved the idea, in theory, of tons of required fields to enhance the searching, in actuality, too many required tags was just going to turn them all off to engage with the tool. So we really had to adjust that number of required fields a few times before we landed in the right place with that balance of searchability and user experience. Once we had that set, we piloted with just a couple of teams. It was a very small pilot. This was helpful because similar to the number of required fields, there's a lot of things that make sense in theory, but we really wanted these folks to test out that configuration so that we could make some tweaks to the configuration, even more tweaks to the taxonomy structure before we went live more broadly. I really do recommend a pilot approach because it's much easier to make those tweaks in the tool when you've got just a few people in it, just in case there's going to be something significant that would require a broad communication. Now, an additional value that we got out of the UATM pilot process is we heard from our marketers which tools were going to be most critical for the DAM to connect to early on. So one example of this is we've got our DAM connected to our brand governance tool. This brand tool houses templates for the Microsoft Office suite of products by line of business for Cigna. So for example, if I go and open up a new PowerPoint deck, the brand governance tool has a pop-up for me to select which Cigna brand approved template I need. It's got things like logos, standard icons that brand has approved for presentations or other documents. And so all of these templates, icons, etc., they all live in the DAM, yet they're connected through Templify, and it's a really seamless experience. So for sure, be thinking about if your internal customers, if they're getting everything they need out of the DAM itself, or if there are some other key tools that should get connected. Then, of course, once you've gotten through all of that, you've got to figure out, how do you launch this thing? How do you get people to start putting all of their content going forward into the library? So we made the decision to let technology really help us here. So our marketing compliance team, which reviews all external marketing materials prior to going to market, they use an intake and project management tool that's actually connected to the DAM as well. So when an asset owner submits intake into the compliance team for review, after that review is complete, the asset owner actually receives an automated task notification via email to archive the content into the DAM. So far, these automated notifications are really successful in pushing those content owners to archive the assets. So what I think is making this so successful is that we're plugging into an existing process. So again, the marketing team is well used to submitting all external materials through the marketing compliance team anyway. So just by adding steps into the workflow for the asset owner to archive that content to the DAM, it was just less change to manage by plugging into that existing process. There are definitely pieces that we had to figure out, like how to point a new asset owner to the upload job aid. So there were pieces that were definitely challenging even within that existing process, but it really was well worth it to tie into that compliance review process, because it's significantly helping us drive what I think is a greater volume of new content into the DAM than if we were to do it as a separate standalone process. Now, this is still pretty new for us, so I expect this will not be foolproof, but because the DAM and the intake or project management tool are connected, my team can actually run reports to determine what's slipping through the cracks and then take that opportunity to further educate the asset owners. Now, another decision point in your rollout plan is around your training approach. We learned through the project management tool, which launched a couple of years before DAM, that training was really most effective when we took the vendor materials as a starting point and then really just personalized them for Cigna. So the only folks that we are hosting live training sessions for are those who are uploading assets into the DAM outside of that compliance review process. We've got job aids posted on our intranet site for other users that I'll get into just a little bit later. But you want that configuration and user experience to be such that folks that are really just using that tool for search and download should not need any live training. So with so many employees at Cigna across the enterprise who are going to be using this tool to search and download, we had to figure out how are all of these people going to get access to the DAM. Now, Cigna, of course, has a number of repositories across the organization. So many, in fact, that about a year ago, or a little over a year ago now, Cigna launched an enterprise repository search site that's connected to multiple repositories. We were able to get the DAM included in this enterprise search site. And this has really made the tool's access very broad and easy, because sales, product, and even some of the marketers were already used to going to that enterprise repository search site. So with a communication planned to target the DAM announcement, the DAM go live announcement, it was really quick to be adopted as that new marketing material repository. Really, I think, thanks largely to being part of this broader enterprise search site. So again, working to plug into an existing process to make things easier. The last point that I want to make on this page is around measurable success. So every organization is going to have unique process pain points that the DAM is solving for, but we're really focused on a few things at Cigna. So reporting on the new assets coming into the tool through that compliance review process, again, ensuring nobody skipped that archive step. so that all of those newly created external marketing materials will get uploaded into the tool. We're also focused on reviewing the versioning. So how often are people repurposing and personalizing existing content to save time from starting from scratch? And then, of course, we need to monitor the effectiveness of our taxonomy or tagging strategy. So for example, how many searches result in 0 assets? Then clearly things would need to be tweaked. And we continue to collect feedback from our marketers on process efficiencies and speed to market. So again, we are relatively early in our journey, but we've come a long way through all of these phases. Being able to measure the effectiveness of this tool, primarily around driving that personalized content and improving our speed to market, really remains critical for me to keep the senior leader support and their engagement. So next, let's talk about partnering with key stakeholders outside of marketing. So while getting my marketing SMEs engaged early and often was really important at the upfront phases, sales is my other key stakeholder. And so I needed to engage with them as well. As you can imagine, the sales team at Cigna is huge, includes well over 10,000 employees. So I connected with the part of sales that handles internal training and communications. So again, we could hook into their existing processes for the rollout to the sales team. So again, we had to think through the best way for sales to access the DAM. And so one of the big wins for us is that enterprise search repository that I mentioned on the last page. Actually, the sales folks connect into it through their CRM. So that really worked for us because it was essentially seamless to them, given that they were already accessing those other repositories through their CRM, and now they're also able to access the DAM. Now, of course, our marketers are going to continue to spoon feed their sales partners as needed. They can send them the direct links to content that they need for various client and broker meetings, whether it's a link to an asset or a link to a collection of assets directly out of the DAM. And so we see the sales team interacting with the DAM in both of those ways. Now, the more challenging piece with sales was really dealing with all of their existing content. Now, some of which we had already tagged and uploaded into the DAM as part of our content audit, but the volume is just huge. So we hadn't gotten through everything by the time that we went live. So the sales training team joined in on the content audit process and were able to prioritize and then tag the most important content that still needed to be brought over to the DAM. Now, the content audit still remains underway for some of those lower priority assets, but by working with our key marketing SMEs and our sales SMEs, we were really able to prioritize that most important content that needed to come over sooner rather than later. And then lastly, as I said earlier, just hooking the communications to sales into their existing processes. So we were really lucky in that we didn't have to craft these messages ourselves. We really just reviewed and approved them before they were sent out to the sales team. The sales operations group also gave us an opportunity to speak directly to the sales team on one of their existing training and product update meetings, just to introduce the DAM and make sure they understood what was coming. So the big takeaway here is really to think about who are your internal customers outside of marketing and get connected. So what's next? You can see that, clearly we still have a lot of work to do here, but the key item that I want to focus on here is that ongoing governance. So for us at Cigna, because that user base is so broad, tens of thousands of employees, including all of marketing, our sales partners, our product partners, it's really critical that we've got short digestible job aids, easily accessible to the users. So we broke out key tasks into job aid PowerPoints or videos so that a user could come onto our intranet page and just pick the specific task that they need support on. Now, we did also have a broad communication strategy to send out mass emails to the users with tips and tricks, and actually we still do this periodically. And this has really helped us onboard folks to the DAM, and ultimately really is getting us to this destination of marketers reusing, repurposing, and of course, personalizing that content. So thank you all so much for your time today. I'd love to take any questions you've got.
Awesome. I am now back live. Thank you, Melissa. That was a great presentation. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, there's some questions coming in. So for those of you, go to the right side of your screen and start asking those questions. I can see some of them coming through. A few things, notes that I took from and learnings that I took from your presentation. I love the fact that you mentioned the apples to apples. And I think if everyone can think of damn apples to damn apples going forward, I think we're going to be okay. I think that's a great way to start evaluating it. I definitely love the fact that you're saying, and for those of the attendees today who are in that stage of potentially looking for a DAM, be mindful, as Melissa said, and look for those strong partnerships with that vendor. I think that's really critical. And I love the fact that you did mention that, Melissa. That was great. I loved your example of the brand governance tool, which led to a really big idea of what are the other tools that might be important, which then reinforces the point of talk to your users.
Yeah.
Would you not agree? Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so what's your mechanism? How do you get those opportunities to engage with your users?
So it really depends. It's this combination of being plugged in with the senior leaders. So just last month, I gave a DAM update at the Chief Marketing Officer's lead team meeting. So I can hear about needs, priorities from that senior level, but then I'm also connecting with what I'd call the doers, right? So what's the feedback on the ground floor? So, you're telling me it's difficult to upload because you don't like having to, look at how many fields are required. Well, let's count them. Are you really complaining for a real reason? Or is it really just taking you maybe 90 seconds? And I can sort of live with that. But getting in at that ground floor, and I continue to maintain that partnership with the sales operations team, because it's not just my marketers that I need to keep happy. If my sales team can't find what they want, they find the tool clunky, they're probably going to shout a lot louder than my marketers. So I'm staying connected at all those different levels so that I can really keep a pulse on what's happening with the tool, what's working, what are things we need to continue to tweak and evolve.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase that as the internal doers. They will tell you when things are good. Yes. They'll also tell you when things are not so good. So mindful to that ongoing engagement. That is excellent. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Question number 1 from S. Ruta. How are you planning to measure ROI? So ROI for those, that's return on investment. So how are you planning to measure ROI of the investment on the DAM and its governance? Good question.
Yeah. Great question. It's not as black and white as you would maybe calculate ROI on, say, a campaign where you know what you put in, you know how many new customers you're getting out of it at the end. It really is around seeing how often content is being repurposed or personalized. So we're able to track that through the versioning metrics. That's been really valuable. Very difficult to calculate speed to market because there's so many factors there, and quite frankly, we just don't have good measurement overall. That's really coming through anecdotally. Interestingly enough, even though that piece is anecdotal, that's of course very meaningful to the senior leadership team. So even though it's not a hard and fast calculation, that excites them and keeps them engaged. And then I would say the last piece is, again, that feedback around, well, I'm no longer wasting time recreating assets because I had no idea something similar existed. So now I can take something, it's maybe 50% of what I want. I only got to create 50%, not 100%. And all of that feedback combined has been really meaningful. We, of course, have good stats on downloads, searches, the effectiveness of the taxonomy and all of that. But it seems to be this anecdotal, the personalization, the saving time, speed to market that gets my partners and my leadership most excited.
And that, speaking of the personalization, we have another good question here from Abby. So when we speak about personalization, we are talking about repurposing and editing files for a new use, thus making things more efficient. Can you elaborate on that?
And you know, maybe I've got something for a group of clients in a particular market. So I've got maybe some language that's really specific to that part of the country, but I can still use a lot of that content, but I got to tweak that 30%. So it's now personalized for a different part of the country, a different market, or maybe it's for a specific client. I've got a client logo. Everything else is just about good to go. I just need to swap out that logo. But before, people couldn't find it. So they would recreate it and spend all that energy. And so this has been really meaningful, allowing us to personalize quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, and hopefully everyone on the attendees today, that personalization argument, you should pepper that into your Dan strategy going forward. I think it's a great calling card for engagement. This question is getting some good positivity, some good votes for this question. So from Phil, when you talk about short pieces of PowerPoints and or videos, what do you consider a good length size for that content? Interesting, good question.
So do you think this question, John, is getting at the effectiveness of content, or was this around the job aids?
I'm assuming in this individual, Phil, if you want to follow up with that, by all means. I'm assuming that when he's Phil's thinking of like the short pieces of content, he's thinking maybe a time length as well in terms of short versus something that's more long form, I suppose. I think it's a size. It could be a size question, I think.
A size question. So Phil, you're going to have to add more if I get off track here, but I'm going to start. You know, what we're finding in terms of communications out to our internal customers, the briefer the better, because if it's too long, whether it's a job aid or it's an email about tips and tricks, it's just
if it's
too
about
much.
the job aids. Phil just wrote back,
I love then I'm on the right track. Love it.
I love a live system. So yeah, Phil, thank you. It was about the job aids.
You know, Phil, this is so interesting because there's not that many unique tasks when you're interacting with a DAM. You've got your search, your upload, your download, your asset owner responsibilities, but being able to break it out into those digestible tasks, make it so quick. Somebody can pop on and watch a 30-second, 1-minute video that just shows you how to do it, or read a 2 to 3 page PowerPoint. I have seen rollouts where people just give these PowerPoints that are endless. Personally, I'm overwhelmed and generally just put them aside. So I'm all about brief and digestible.
Yeah. So we've got about a minute left-ish. There's still questions coming in. I'd love to try and get 2 more if possible.
Great.
Let's try for sure. Do you have any, Anonymous? Thank you, Anonymous. Do you have any tips for encouraging adoption of users? That's always good to get more adoption.
Yeah.
Any tips on that?
You've got to have that senior leader support, because if you can show the reporting of volume, you know roughly how much content's being created. Your senior leaders are going to know, is that 20%, 50, 70%? Where are you? So that's one piece, because if you've got those senior leaders saying, hey, team, you're accountable for this, that goes a really long way. I would also tell you, think about what are your processes in place that already are around new content creation that you can plug into, like I did with the compliance review process. That's making a huge difference.
All right, last question. It could be a yes or no, and we'll leave it at that because there's more to it, I'm sure. Todd asked, did your procurement people have any experience with DAM? Yes or no?
No, but they were still awesome partners.
Good. Awesome. Everyone, please join me in thanking Melissa for this wonderful presentation. Well done, Cigna.